Today's notes are dividing fractions. Dividing fractions is almost as simple as multiplying fractions, except there's one extra step you have to do prior to multiplying, because you will not multiply. You never actually divide fractions. You actually multiply. So please make sure you're following along. If you miss something, pause it, rewind it, watch it again. It's not very difficult. So we'll go through these dividing fractions notes up here on the top, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then we'll go through some examples. So dividing fractions. First thing, you got to write all mixed numbers as proper fractions, okay? Or improper fractions, I'm sorry. Everything needs to be in a fraction form. You can't have a whole number. Same as when you're multiplying fractions. You cannot have a whole number in your expression or your equation and be able to do this correctly, okay? But with multiplication, the division is the same. You do not have to worry about a common denominator. All you have to worry about is, do I have fractions only, and do I have it set up right? So write all mixed numbers as improper fractions, change the division symbol to multiplication, and flip the second fraction to its reciprocal. So I'll show you what that means here in a minute. I'm sure reciprocal might be something new, or you're not really sure what that is. It just means the opposite of what it was, okay? So let's look at number 1. First thing, I have a whole number there. How do I make a whole number into a fraction? All I got to do is put a 1 under it, okay? A whole number by itself, not if it has a fraction, it's a different story. But if it's just a whole number by itself, you just put a 1 under it. That makes it a fraction. Next, what do I got to do? I got to change the division symbol to multiplication. Okay, that was easy enough. Next, I need to flip the second fraction. Well, flip it. I've got a negative 1 over 4. It's still going to be negative, and now it's just going to be a 4 over 1. That's it. And now it's just multiplication like in the previous section. So a negative 3 times a negative 4 gives me a positive 12. Negative times negative gives me a positive. 1 times 1 is 1. Okay, now I got to simplify. 12 divided by 1, or how many times is 1 going to 12? 12. There's my answer. That was not very difficult. Let's look at number 2. 8/5. We just write 8/5. There's no whole number, so it's already a fraction. I don't have to mess with it. Take the division symbol, change it to multiplication. Now the second one, I'm going to have to do some stuff too. I got to multiply and add. So 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8. So that gives me 8/3. So I'm going to flip that to 3/8. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish this, but then I'm going to go back and say something about how this is set up right now. But let's go ahead and multiply straight across. 8 times 3 is 24. 5 times 8 is 40. And now I need to look at numbers that would go into 24 and 40. Well, numbers that go into 24, I got 24 that go into 24. We've got 2, we've got 4, we've got 6, we've got 8. I don't want to go too much further. Now look at 40. What numbers go into 40? Well, we've got 2, we've got 4, we've got 5, we've got 8. Oh, I think I'm looking at 8 because the next biggest one is 10, and up here the next biggest one is 12. I think I want this 8. 8 divided, or 24 divided by 8, and 40 divided by 8. That gives me 3/5. Okay, so that would be my final answer once I've reduced it or simplified it. Now, one of the things you could have done, back over here, let me use red, is this 8 and this 8. I can cross-reduce those to become actually a 1 and a 1, because 8 goes into 8 one time. And then if I multiply straight across, guess what I get? 3/5. Because the 1 times 3 and the 5 times 1. And I wouldn't have had to reduce it later. But see, I would have got the same answer either way. Okay, so you can cross-reduce also. It helps if you reduce your fractions, and it helps if you cross-reduce. You can cross-reduce like that. Let's look at number 3. I've got a mixed number for my first fraction. So first thing I got to do is fix that. I got to multiply and add. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 1 is 8. So now I have 8 sevenths. I change that division to multiplication. I flip that second number or second fraction, so I get negative 4 over 1. Now, I don't see anything I can reduce there. I can't cross reduce. I can't reduce either with a fraction, so I'm just going to go ahead and multiply straight across. So a positive 8 times a negative 4, positive times a negative, because there's only one negative in that, gives me a negative. That's an odd number of negatives, so my answer's got to be negative. 8 times 4, that's 32. 7 times 1 is 7. So now I've got negative 32 over 7. Now I can reduce that. How many times is 7 going to 32? Well, 7 times 1 is 7. 2 times 7 is 14. 3 times 7 is 21. 4 times 7 is 28. I'm sneaking up on 32. 5 times 7 is 35. That's too much. So it's definitely going to be a negative 4. That negative moves out to the front to the whole number. And if I take 28 out of 32, I'm left with 4 sevenths. Okay? So that is my final answer. Number 4. Again, all I got to do is put a 1 under the whole number. There's no fraction with that 12. I just put a 1 under it. Change that division to multiplication. I still have to fix this. Don't forget, multiply and add. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. So that would have given me 3 halves. I take that fraction and I flip it. Oops, not a 2. That's not a 1. That's a 2. I flip it to its reciprocal. Reciprocal just means the opposite of what it was. Flipped it. Now, I can cross reduce. I'm going to do this 2 different ways. So just watch and then figure out which way you like to do it. Okay? Now, I can just go ahead and multiply straight across here. That gives me 24 thirds. And I know 24 divided by 3 is 8. Okay? Now on this other one, I can cross reduce 12 and 3. Well, I know 3 goes into 12 4 times and 3 goes into 3 once. Then go ahead and multiply straight across. 4 times 2 is 8. 1 times 1 is 1. It still gives me 8. I get the same answer whether I cross reduce, if I reduce before I multiply or after I multiply. So you can do it either way. I don't care which way you do it. If it's simpler just to reduce after you've done all your math, that's fine. If you get the hang of cross reducing and everything else, do it that way too. Okay? Here's what I want you to do. Try 5 and 7. Go ahead and pause it, and when we come back, I'll give you the answer so you'll know what it is. Okay, hopefully you tried 5 and 7. 5, I'll give you the answer, was 35 over 2, or that reduces to 17 and a half. Number 7 was 27 over 14, or that reduces to 1 and 13/14. Okay? Hopefully you tried those on your own. You got to try these on your own. Let's look at the back. These are basically similar. Try to do number 9 and 11 on your own. And then I'm going to do 14, but I'm going to have you guys do 13 and 15 on your own. Okay, let's look at 14. After a party in her class, Mrs. Jones has 3 3/5 pounds of fruit left. She splits the fruit into 2/5 pound portions. How many portions will she have? Well, splits, that should give you an idea. That right there means to divide. So she had 3 3/5, and she's going to divide it into 2/5 pounds portions. So first thing I need to do, I need to get rid of this whole number, so I got to multiply and add. Okay, so 5 times 3 is 15, plus 3 is 18. So that's 18/5. Change the division to multiplication, flip the 2/5. Okay, so that just means they change places. So that becomes 5 over 2. Now, I'm seeing something right there off the top. I can reduce, cross-reduce. 5 and 5, that's a 1 and a 1. Okay, 5 goes into 5 one time, 5 goes into 5 one time. Then I straight multiply across. 18 times 1 is 18. 1 times 2 is 2. Well, guess what? 18 divided by 2 is 9. She's going to have 9 portions. Okay? So, attempt 13 and 15 on your own. And also please try 9 and 11 on your own. And we'll go from there. If you have any questions, let me know, or go ahead and rewind this. Remember, division is not harder than multiplication. It's just got one extra step where you got to change the division sign and flip the second fraction. Make sure you have a fraction. That's one of the simplest parts. No whole numbers when you start to multiply. Okay, that is it. Talk to you next time.